Recently, I attended the annual American War of Independence reenactment at Fort Lawrence in Bolivar, Ohio, and while it wasn't much addressed, the weapons demonstrations actually perfectly showed one of the most defining elements of linear warfare. The smoke. Now that day at the event, it was humid. I mean, it was so humid, so wet in the air, you felt like you could drown just standing in a field. So humid, in fact, that I even deigned to vent my wrists a little bit. Crazy, I know, if you can believe it or not. But all of this meant that when the guns were fired and great plumes of smoke were shot out of the muzzles and touch holes of guns, the surrounding atmosphere just refused outright to absorb it. And because it wasn't all that windy of a day, I mean, there was some breeze, but not very much, it meant that the smoke would just hang there in the air, retaining its form in great billowing clouds, gently moving their way across the grounds, which made it the perfect opportunity, I think, to demonstrate exactly what is meant when historians of warfare discuss the role of smoke and the lack of visibility on battlefields of the long 18th and 19th centuries. Looking again at the artillery footage, don't just look at the immediate effects of the blast, but look at how the smoke travels afterwards, and how by the time this battery of tiny little field pieces is reloaded and ready to fire again, while the smoke has moved away a bit, it's still there. It's obscuring the trees and the car park behind. And here's the thing. That may not seem all too impressive at first, but consider that these guys were reloading slowly. I don't just mean here, because a lot of them are a little bit older and they're all exhausted after what was a pretty long and, again, very humid and tiring event. Modern-day safety regulations for those cannon basically meant that they were taking their sweet time with it all, with, moving the round ever so slowly forward and swabbing out the guns twice each time. Extra careful warming, really make sure there's no debris left in that barrel, all that sort of thing. And that's all very important stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's also worth noting that in roughly 6.5 minutes worth of footage, you can see that they only actually fired their guns 4 times. In a real battle, that would be just pathetic, because you could expect these guns to be firing at least 2, maybe even 3 shots every minute, the same rate as a musket, effectively. Could you just imagine how intense these levels of smoke would be if, rather than firing 4 rounds per gun, they got off between 13 and 20 rounds each? And then consider that on occasion, the guns could get even faster, and of course much larger as well. Those are all tiny guns. If you're dealing with a siege, we're talking like 32-pound cannon and whatnot. So now, I'd like to show you some footage of, I believe it's a Czech reenactment group, portraying an Austrian army gun crew operating very rapidly a 6-pounder cannon. Again, pay attention not only to how quickly these men are able to put rounds down range, a talent which you can imagine being very helpful if a column of Frenchmen or Turks or something is bearing down on you, but also pay attention to how that smoke is building up and lingering across the field as a result. And again, remember that this is only one gun. Imagine entire batteries, entire armies worth of guns, all blazing away in the same fashion. And then we might begin to understand just how obscured these battlefields could become. Such images are, of course, lost to history, for the most part. But on occasion, you get those sorts of reenactments where there are just so many people that you can at least glimpse a small fraction of what it must have been like back in the day. Events like Waterloo and Gettysburg. of which you'll find countless videos online demonstrating exactly what I mean. And remember, of course, that even these massive reenactments are positively tiny when compared to the real battles, especially in terms of the artillery, and again, how rapidly those guns are firing. But there is more to this story. There always is, isn't there? As usual, the experiences of present-day reenactors is not a one-to-one to history. Inherently, it never can be. And just because we see something play a massive role in reenactment doesn't necessarily mean that it was a factor historically, or that it was such a large factor historically. For example, I've already mentioned the extent to which smoke actually lingers in the air is going to vary a lot on individual factors that are outside of an army's control. How humid is it that day? How strong and consistent is the wind? And plenty of others. You know, if the weather is just right, someone will fire a musket and the smoke will pretty much immediately dissipate and be blown away, and it's not going to be all too much of a factor. It's going to vary. Another vital element to remember is this. The powder itself, the very stuff that's causing that smoke to begin with. Historical black powder was produced and stored in very different conditions from the modern stuff that reenactors use. And some reenactors don't even use black powder to begin with. They use special-made propellant powders, which burn differently and might have many different properties, which I don't really know the chemistry to get into it on lab, but suffice to say, there are a lot of different factors that are going to have a pretty big impact on things like smoke levels, as well as things like the speed at which rounds will go out of the barrel and blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're interested in a more in-depth look, there is an amazing video on the channel Paper Cartridges, where two gentlemen that you may recognize discuss the history and the use of black powder, including how it was produced historically, the different elements that go into it, and vitally, how it's different from what is used today, and how in some cases, modern powder can actually produce more smoke than would have been present historically. So especially if you're a black powder shooter yourself, or if you haven't interested in this really, niche stuff and learning all there is to know about this mystical, explodey sand stuff, well, then I recommend that you go and watch that video. But for our more cursory purposes here today, a good way to balance out, I think, the differences in our recreated experiences today and the reality of the past is naturally going to be by looking at the primary sources. What were the figures of the time themselves saying about this stuff? And of course, we'll hear from them right after we hear from the most important source of all, Little Timmy, and the video's sponsor, World of Tanks. Well, hey there, Little Timmy. How's it going? Looks like you're ready to ship out and fight some Frenchmen.
Well, I suppose so.
What's wrong? Aren't you excited for the adventure ahead?
Well, I was, but some of the lads have been talking about some of the equipment that the French have, and it's leaving me a little worried. Have you ever heard of a tank?
A tank? In Napoleonic France?
Yes, there are over 800 of them. Fast-moving light tanks, heavy tanks with great big guns, self-propelled artillery, even tank destroyers. And I hear that each one of them can be upgraded and modified by their commanders to meet any sort of threat that we could possibly throw at them.
Timmy.
And that we're going to be expected to fight these mechanical monstrosities across dense forests, arid deserts, even in city streets. 40 different, I think the lads are calling them maps for some reason. How are we supposed to match them for their speed and firepower in any of those different places?
Now, Timmy, you should know better than to listen to such rumors. Those men weren't talking about the war.
They weren't?
No, they were talking about World of Tanks, the free-to-play multiplayer game where anyone, even you, Timmy, can feel like a real tank commander in a furious armored offensive, but without all the worries of, actual armored combat.
Oh, heavens! Well, that's a relief. Say, How do I play this game? It sounds fun.
Why, just use my invitation link in the description below. Use the code TANKMANIA to get started, and when you do so, you'll even get the Tier 5 Excelsior tank for free, alongside 250,000 credits and 7 days of premium access. You'll also get to use 3 Tier 6 rental tanks for up to 10 battles each: the Tiger 131, the Cromwell B, and the T-3485M.
Well, thanks, Brandon. Not only have you assuaged my fears, but now I have a fun free-to-play game for after all the drill.
Oh, don't thank me, little Timmy. Thank World of Tanks for sponsoring this video. Well, speaking in a purely tactical sense, you won't find all that many sources really getting into the impact of smoke on the battlefield. In one respect, again, it's something that would be highly situational, and it wouldn't necessarily always be as big of a problem as when there was very little breeze and very high humidity. And on the other hand, of course, it's also something that was so run-of-the-mill expected that I feel like a lot of these, again, tactical kinds of sources just wouldn't think to mention it because it's sort of built in, if you will. Now, that being said, some soldiers' guides and manuals will mention the impact of smoke, and particularly in the firings, like, for example, in The Soldier's Pocket Guide to Shooting by W.G. Underhill, published actually as late as 1878, where he writes that an irregularly fired volley cannot be so effective as one which is fired simultaneously, owing to the fact that the later shots of a badly executed volley must necessarily be fired through a cloud of smoke, when a correct aim could not be maintained. And later, he actually describes how if the soldiers are engaging in independent firing, some of the men might end up firing far too quickly for their own good, not only overheating their barrel, which I'm well familiar with, but the smoke becomes too thick, rendering correct aim difficult. This principle doesn't seem to only be theoretical either, nor was it limited to the late 19th century. If we go back in time, some 60 years or so, we'll actually find a great example of exactly this happening during the Napoleonic Wars in the Recollections of Rifleman Harris. I myself was very soon so hotly engaged, loading and firing away, enveloped in the smoke that I created, and the cloud which hung about from the continued fire of my comrades, that I could see nothing for a few minutes but the red flash of my own piece amongst the white vapor clinging to my very clothes. This has often seemed to me the greatest drawback upon our present system of fighting, for whilst in such a state, on a calm day, until some friendly breeze of wind clears the space around, a soldier knows no more of his position and what is about to happen in his front, or what has happened, even amongst his own companions, than the very dead lying around. And a short time after this description, Harris describes how he was obliged to stop firing and dash the smoke aside from my face, and try in vain to get a sight of what was going on, whilst groans and shouts and a noise of cannon and musketry appeared almost to shake the very ground. It seemed hell upon earth, I thought. For some men, the presence of this smoke was one of the most beautiful and terrible elements of battle, as if it were some great natural disaster, yet created by man. During the initial bombardments leading to the Battle of the Great Redan in the Crimean War, one witness to the British lines, as quoted in Decisive Battles Since Waterloo, would describe how there were wreaths of clouds and vapors hanging over the valleys, and on the lines of buildings inside the defenses, which have kept the armies watching so long in front of Sebastopol. This stream of fire was fully 3 miles long. It ran from battery to battery, and was followed instantly by great clouds of white smoke. It resembled more than anything else the white clouds rising from Vesuvius or Etna just previous to an eruption of those famous mountains. The smoke in the still morning air covered the whole lines of the French trenches as though a great cloud had fallen upon them, while the slight breeze of the morning whirled them in jets and bunches, much as you see a cloud on the summit of a mountain driven about in a thunderstorm. The great cloud of smoke rolling from these batteries was turned toward Sebastopol and seemed to envelop the entire city. Another, more brief description of this surreal and terrible beauty comes from the American Civil War and the Memorial War Book, published after the fact in the 1890s. There was a slight breeze along the side of the mountain, and it carried the musketry smoke with it in a heavy, pencil-like cloud. For over an hour the musketry continued, a cloud of smoke rolling down into the valley, tinged here and there with broad bands of gold and rosy tints as the descending sun began reddening the western horizon. But of course, not every description of this battlefield element was so pleasant, especially not among those men most intimately familiar with its otherworldly terror, on whom it feels at times in various accounts to have left an indelible psychological mark. In his 1831 book, The Contents of a Soldier's Knapsack, John Shipp, a veteran of 33 years' service, opens his short story, The Explosion, describing an arsenal being destroyed, so not quite the same thing here, but the basic principle remains, I think. He opens it thusly. "What is yon dense smoke that rises to view?" said a soldier to his comrade when viewing a besieged city at some distance. "That," replied his comrade with a teardrop standing in his eye, "is the newly erected monument of many a veteran brave, many a fond mother, many a dutiful child, and many a heroic boy." And in another story, A Wounded Soldier, he wrote of, "Oh, how the heart and eye will follow a brother or dear comrade in the battle's rage, and will never take itself off the esteemed object till hid amidst the dense smoke. And what is his disappointment when the wind blows that away, to find the dear object fled, perhaps to that home where soldiers rest in peace and meet dear comrades not in battle array, but in the white and pure garments of everlasting peace." Although surely no piece of Shipp's beautiful writing is quite so clear on the role of smoke in warfare during this period as his On Smoke in the Field of Battle and Robbing the Dead of Their Teeth, where his story begins, "Yon dense smoke, still lingering o'er the enameled plain, hides many a gaping wound, many a distorted and agonized countenance in the last pangs of death. It shields from the flying foe some brother dear, endeavoring to rise to take a last glimpse of those dear countrymen with whom he has fought and bled. These dense smokes hide many a foul and bloody murder by avaricious wretches that follow large armies for the purpose, yes, for the base purpose of plunder and rapine. Many is the veteran brave who has met his finishing blow by the hand of his countrymen, one who had, during the terrific fight, hid his dastard front behind some place of safety, there to wait the golden moment to pounce upon the dead and the dying, and there rifle their mangled bodies, screened by the white smoke of battle. The evening breeze can expel and drive home the common smoke, but the bloody deeds of such miscreants are registered in heaven in crimsoned letters that no wind can efface or blow away." If you're interested in reading more from any of those sources, or plenty of others besides, I've listed all of them as free PDFs on my website, nativeoak.org. Admittedly, the website section is a little messy at the moment. I need to reorganize everything, but I'm going to make sure that it's easy to find all those books that I just mentioned if you'd like to read more from any of them. And I would particularly recommend looking through A Soldier's Knapsack, the book, not in real life, because there are some beautifully and tragically written pieces there. But when it comes to smoke on the battlefields of the long 18th and 19th centuries, like I've said, it's something that's very often discussed, and for that reason I think it's something that can be very easily overlooked as obvious, something that doesn't necessarily warrant a lot of specific attention, because everyone already knows about it, right? There's nothing surprising to be learned there. But I felt it would still be worthwhile to dedicate a video to it, because it's in those details, those obvious details, seemingly obvious details, that certain vital elements of material culture and the like can be brought out, and without which it's impossible, I think, to really appreciate what these people historically were going through. And I hope for that reason that you've enjoyed this video and that it's helped you to maybe think about these historic battles and historic environments, historic situations, in a bit of a different way. I know that reading through some of those primary sources certainly helped me to think about it in such a different way. So thank you all for watching, and especially to those of you who support my work on Patreon and now on Ko-Fi as well. You can do one-off gifts there if you're so inclined, but regardless of how your generosity comes, it's because of that generosity, that support, that I'm able to make these videos to begin with, and for that I am ever gracious towards you. Anyways, remember as well that if you'd like to see these videos early and without the sponsored messages, I take those out for the other things, then you can view these videos on the YouTube alternative Recast as well. I often, where I can, publish videos early on Recast, so go check it out there. And of course, until the next time, my dear viewer, I am and I shall remain your most humble and obedient of servants.